Good morning. Just a few more days until the book will be released, Kennedy and Trump. I'm looking forward to having this book out there. And I did a two-part clip entry that covers everything. That covers not everything, but covers a lot of the journey between Kennedy and Trump on their road to the White House. When I first started writing the book, it was more of a Kennedy versus Trump book. That changed as the two forces combine and the mega powers become one. So unite America. I got this shirt in, this is from MAGA. This is from the MAGA website. And I got this cup also from the MAGA website. I got this shirt in red, obviously. I got it in white. And next I'm going to get it in blue, red, white, and blue. And then maybe I'll pick a few other colors if they have any. So the book should be hopefully out here in a couple days. We'll see, maybe another week. And but it covers Kennedy and Trump's journey to the White House, and I have been blessed to be on that journey and to watch it change for the better. Just when I thought it was going to get worse, everything got better. And if you've been paying any attention to all the stuff Kennedy has been doing since then, since being nominated and being confirmed as the HHS Secretary, Human Health and Services Secretary, hopefully you're as pleased with what Kennedy is doing so far as I am. Now, if you're not paying attention and you're just looking at the mainstream media, just looking at what the headlines say, you would think the guy is like doing all this crazy radical stuff. But if you listen to his side and if you watch his videos and if you take the time to just follow him on X or follow him, and you got to follow a couple of his channels there on YouTube, or if you get a chance to find any of his speakings, which are very difficult. I just happened to find this one. Thankfully, it was on, I believe, Forbes News. And so I was able to find this one where RFK Jr., Secretary RFK Jr., is speaking. This happened yesterday morning, and I had no idea. Thankfully, it came across my feed. But RFK Jr. was speaking at the 2025 RX and Illicit Drug Summit in Nashville, Tennessee. So I was able to grab that and upload it, and I'm going to play some of that here. It was not the greatest. There is some shaky cam, but if you just listen to it, it's really good stuff. For anyone who has battled addiction of any kind, even though his were specifically coke, meth, and heroin, shooting up heroin at a very young age, a very young and early age. And by the age 28, he had become clean and sober for the last time. He talks about the stories where as a kid, he'd do these drugs and then he'd wake up the next morning hating himself and, regretting it and saying, man, I broke this promise to myself that I wasn't going to do this. I wasn't going to live this type of lifestyle. And he said by that afternoon, he was doing it. He was back to doing more drugs. And so that is a big battle. And one other thing that he mentioned that stuck out to me, it's like he said he felt like there was in his life from birth, it was like there was a hole in his life. There was something missing in his life. And I dare say that is God. What is missing in our life is God. And we need God in our life. And not just any God, not a God you make up, not yourself as God, but the real God, the one true God. Who brought back his son to die on the cross for our sins, the God you will find in the Holy Bible. So I've had mixed reactions, mixed views on the 12-step program, on AA, having seen some things where it worked for people and where it didn't work for people, where it enabled people, where they would just trade one vice for another vice. I mean, I'm no better. Anyone who watches any of my shows knows that I drink wine too. And I drink a lot of coffee. I have cut down on my coffee though, and try to cut down on my wine because I got to get these calories down. But we all have something. We all have some type of vice, some type of thing that we struggle with. And so hearing Kennedy, the current HHS secretary, talk about his addiction and the embarrassments and just all the stuff that he went through was interesting. But how he got over it and how he started living that sober life and started living that positive life and started taking responsibility for the things that were happening in his life, and how he was then able to deal with failures. He was able to deal with when things went right, when things went wrong. He says he goes to AA every day. Every day. I'm like, really? Every day? Every day? That's difficult to believe. Like, you must be doing it through Zoom or something like that. But says he still does it every day. He asked somebody in the program, how long am I supposed to keep doing this for? And the person said, until you like it. And Kennedy was like, in the speech that you'll hear, he's like, 40 years later, I still don't like it. So, pretty funny stuff. There may have been a few hecklers. It's not really pointed out that much, and it's hard to, well, it's not hard for some of these crazies to heckle Kennedy for anything, to find him and do this. But, these are people, this summit here is for people that really struggle with RX, which means drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, over the counter drugs, all that, maybe not over the counter stuff, but you know what I mean, and illicit drugs. So these are people that are very serious about helping others to get sober, to stay sober, so that we can make this country healthy again. This is a big part of it. So whoever was able to get Kennedy to show up here to speak for about 35 minutes or so, God bless them. And you will notice the audio is kind of rough. And one thing that I notice about RFK Jr. is, as he goes on in his speeches, the throat thing, the vocal thing gets easier. For me, I have no problem with it, having grown up with a stutter myself. It's different, obviously, than what he went through, but I can relate, and I can see it sometimes in his hands and his movements. You're struggling to get a word out. You know what you want to say, and you just can't say it. So I sympathize with that. I can relate to that. And for him to get up there and continually do all of these things that he's doing is great. And it makes me want to keep going, and just reminds me that whatever roadblocks God has put in our path, it is so that we can figure out a way to hurdle over them, to get over them, to climb over them, to walk over them, to scrape over them. Even when you get to that top and you think you finally got it, you're finally over that roadblock, and you fall right back down to the very bottom, and you got to start all over again. Do not give up. God is always with you. Jesus is always with you. This is a very powerful, moving speech by our HHS secretary. He says he has $4 billion. His department has $4 billion to tackle the drug problem that we have in this country. So you could throw money at it, but that's not going to solve the problem. And he goes through all of the different ways. So I will be skipping a little bit through some of it. But please go and watch this 38-minute clip. I really hope that you found it as powerful as I did. As someone, again, who is not, I'm not crazy about the 12-step program. I think I don't want to bash it either, because I do believe that it has worked for people. I think it can work for people, and if it works for you, don't let anybody stop you from doing it. And that's the last thing that I would want to do. And I failed, and I'll keep trying and keep going forth. And I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. And I have no problem being wrong. And I have no problem learning from being wrong. That's just part of life. So before I get to that, after that little teaser, then I'm just going to go to something else, go to a whole nother thing with RFK Jr. This is from his X channel, I guess. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, on X. He's got some good stuff here. He posted this about 13 hours ago. Thank you to Minister, and I can't pronounce that, of Argentina, for a productive first meeting where we discussed collaborative efforts to combat the chronic disease epidemic. Together, we will work to make the world healthier and stronger. So not only MAGA, now we're MIGA, make Make the world, make globalism better again. I don't know. I don't know what the right acronym for that would be, but it's great to see. It's great to see them discussing this with Argentina. Don't cry for me then or now or ever. This was from 16 hours ago. Secretary Kennedy says this New York Times piece is more fake news. We are not terminating the study. NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya has himself used the study in his own research. We all recognize that this project is mission critical for women's health. And here's the garbage New York Times article, I guess. Federal officials promised to restore funding to Women's Health Initiative. Investigators had been informed that funding for the decades-long research effort would be slashed. Officials said on Thursday evening that grant would be restored. So more fake news there. Launched under POTUS's EO executive order, the Justice Department's new task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias is well underway. We will continue to investigate the Biden administration's failure to uphold America's religious freedoms and protect faith-based institutions. Thank you, Pam Bondi. And look at that. That is a great group of people right there. Linda McMahon, RFK Jr., Pam Bondi front and center, of course. There's Kash Patel. The gang is all here. Kristi Noem, Pete Hegseth. Collins is back there, former Senator Collins, I believe. An amazing crew. And as I was going back, because I am just about finished with another book called The NWO. And one of the last chapters is on voter fraud and kind of going back and looking at who was a part of Trump's team back in 2017, really in 2020, the ones that made it through 2020. And man, the swamp was alive and kicking in the Republican Party and in Trump's cabinet. And so it's nice to see not too many people from Trump's first term are here. Now, Linda McMahon only made it, I think, the first 2 years, 2017, 2018, and she took off. Well, she's back now. So she was a part of the she was in charge of the small businesses in 2017 when she joined the first Trump administration, and now she is leading the Department of Education. So a big step up for her, which is great to see. And I do hope that RFK Jr. is, even after Trump is gone, Trump will leave office in 2028, or technically 2029, January 21st, 2029. But I hope that we'll see a lot of these same faces there, especially RFK Jr. I really do hope that he will be there for at least another 10, 12, 14, like Kash Patel, another 12 years or so. I think that would be awesome. Okay. Last one here. For too long, some food producers have been feeding Americans petroleum-based chemicals without their knowledge or consent. These poisonous compounds offer no nutritional benefit and pose real, measurable dangers to our children's health and development. That era is coming to an end. We are restoring gold standard science, applying common sense, and beginning to earn back the public's trust. And we're doing it by working with industry to get these toxic dyes out of the foods our families eat every day. I'm going to play this one. I'm sure now if I go to the HHS YouTube channel, I'm sure it's going to be there now. It wasn't there before, but that's okay. I'm going to play this.
Let's join me in welcoming a warrior for America's children, RFK Jr.
When my uncle was president in the 1960s, we had the healthiest people in the world. 3% of American kids had chronic disease. Today, it's around 60%. This is existential for our country, and we have to address it.
Secretary Kennedy has said that he would instruct the FDA to examine concerning ingredients in the nation's food supply, and today we are delivering on that promise. Today, the FDA is taking action to remove petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply and from medications. Today's announcement fulfills the administration's promise to use both gold standard science and common sense.
I want to commend the food companies for working with us to achieve this agreement. And I want to thank the moms and thank President Trump for his confidence in my leadership and for allowing me to surround myself with such an extraordinary team of scientists. We are going to win this battle. And 4 years from now, we're going to have most of these products off the market, or you will know about them when you go in the grocery store. Thank you all very much.
God bless America.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
So cool to see. Yeah, the world has come. We have come so far since the last 4 years of Biden's dark winter. The guy couldn't even, well, I don't even have to say, you know what Biden could not do. Very strange things that happen. And it all really did start, maybe not start, but a big catalyst, I believe, was in 2020, was the voter fraud that we saw in 2020. I lost a whole channel. I had a voter fraud 2020 channel. It's gone. I had a lot of videos on following the voter fraud at the time. They're gone. But if you go and you Google or look up or search for voter fraud 2020, I'll bet you know exactly what you'll find. You don't even have to do it. You probably already know exactly what we're going to see. So there was another reason why for the NWO book, I was looking for an ending and I couldn't really, and this is not the ending. This chapter is not the ending, but there was a few chapters in there that just didn't feel right. It wasn't into it. So I cut them out and got the book down to about maybe 130 pages or so. And then I felt like there was something missing. I wasn't really sure what it was. A chapter was missing. So I went back and I looked at the voter fraud 2020 book that I had kind of started and then scrapped. I still had about 130 pages. And most of it wasn't really anything to write home about. So I think I got it down to about 30 pages now, maybe 30, 40 pages. And then the chapter still needed an ending. It still needed something at the end. And I remembered that while I was writing the Kennedy and Trump book, I had a chapter on the voter fraud because Kennedy and Trump during the 2024 presidential election season, I guess, they had both talked about voter fraud in 2020 because obviously it was a big question that everybody kept asking Trump. It kept asking any congressman who supported Trump, what's your view on 2020? Why didn't, he's never said that the 2020 election wasn't rigged. Trump has stayed true to his word. He believes it was rigged. He believed he won in 2020 and that's it. And he's never wavered from it. He never conceded in 2020. And he did not show up when Joe Biden was inaugurated either. So those are just the facts. And Trump has never wavered from that. And maybe we'll get a real investigation, a bigger investigation into that at some point. It's not the most important thing now. I think you may see a lot of this stuff happen towards the end of Trump's term. But anyways, so there's a lot of stuff that was cut from the Kennedy and Trump book, by the way. But one chapter that was cut was the voter fraud chapter. So I was able to merge the voter fraud chapter to make it the end of the NWO chapter on voter fraud. So that's how the voter fraud chapter in the NWO book ends, is with Kennedy and Trump talking about it in 2024. So, oh, that's cool. And then I was like, still something missing. What is it? What is it? What is it? And then it hit me. I had another chapter that I had cut out called censorship. And so that was the perfect ending. So that's the next chapter, the last chapter I'll be working on for my NWO book. The perfect ending to it. It should end with censorship. It starts with Napoleon declaring himself king, taking over, which leads to the Rothschild Bank taking over, which leads to a lot of crazy things that happen, the globalism that we see how the bank runs, which led to the Federal Reserve, which led to everyone talking about the NWO, which led to JFK's assassination, the Bohemian Grove. And then it's a nice way to end the book with the censorship deal. All right, so that's all I got for that. I'm going to play some of RFK Jr.'s speech here, and I probably will skip around. I don't think I'll play the whole thing, but I'm going to skip around a little bit and play some of it.
Familiar with the science of human health.
And the audio is really low.
For all of you, your lives, each one of you have been touched by this disease. And my life was, and my family is no exemption. I lost my brother, who was my closest friend, to this disease. I lost another brother, not directly through overdose, but through what I believe is a symptom of this disease. During the pandemic, I lost a niece who was like a daughter to me, who lived in our home for much of her life, went on vacations with us. And we think that she took her first drug and overdosed on it and died at my mom's house. I lost another niece a few months later, not to death, but she's a quadriplegic. She was sober. She went out.
I was kind of confused on the clapping, but I think if you can hear it in the background, but I think what the clapping was, I think this may have been the first heckler that they kicked out. I'm not sure, not 100% sure what was going on there. Just wanted to throw that in.
She went out for just a night and she became a quadriplegic. And so we're all affected by this. And I was personally affected. So I'm HHS secretary. And I was given a speech by one of my agencies, by Samson, asked by two of them. And it was loaded with the grim inventories that document the terrible, the catastrophic cost of this disease in recent years to our country. I thought it might be more helpful to all of you if you to share some of my own experience with this disease and some of the lessons that I've learned from recovery. I was born in a very and raised in an extremely close and Catholic family. I don't know if my addiction was a result of genes. My mother family had alcoholism all the way back to Neanderthal times. And she was one of the only members to escape it, or whether it came from trauma or anything. And it's really irrelevant how I got it. People say you don't look at the past, you look at the past, but you don't stare at it. And, I know that the only way that I stay sober is through taking responsibility for my daily actions. By accepting things I can't control and trying to practice gratitude for them. And with the knowledge that the only thing that I really control is this little piece of real estate inside of my own shoes. And I can have control over my behavior, my daily conduct, and not of the world around me. And I can't let the world around me control me. But I was close. I had a huge family, 29 cousins, 11 brothers and sisters, all very close. We went to daily mass in the summertime, sometimes 2 masses a day. We said the rosary every night. We prayed before and after each meal. We read the Bible every night. And I integrated a lot of that into my life. It was an Irish Catholic community. And the schools and our family was conscious that this disease disproportionately impacts our race. We call it the Irish flu. And that and there was a custom in our schools to take the pledge, which came from Ireland. So you would swear that you would never take a drink in your lifetime. And you were given a pledge pin if you were willing to take that vow. And I took it when I was a kid, and I took that responsibility very serious, that commitment very seriously. By the time I was 15 years old, I never even drank coffee.
That's crazy.
And my father died the summer before. And that summer, I went to a party, a going away party for the elder brother of a friend of mine who was being shipped to Vietnam. He'd been drafted, and the party turned into a melee, and he ended up hitting a cop and going to jail instead of Vietnam. But I was hitchhiking home from that party, and an older boy who I knew, but only vaguely, picked me up, and he offered me a tab of LSD. And LSD had come to Cape Cod that night. This was 1969. And a lot of people in my town, as it turned out, had taken it. I would never have taken it, but the town that I lived in had one store, and had a post office, one store. And every Tuesday, the comic books came to that store. And I was addicted to comic books, as were a lot of my peers. And my favorite comic was a comic called Turok, Son of Stone, which was about these two Indians. And about 2 weeks before, the episode was that they had taken mescaline or peyote or some kind of hallucinogen, and they were transported back in time, and they saw dinosaurs. And I had a deep interest in paleontology. And I said to the guy, if I take that, will I see dinosaurs? And he said, you might. And I ended up taking it, and I had this wonderful experience of very, very intense hallucinations. But in the morning, I was remorseful. And I was kicking myself and saying, you swore you would never do this. You broke your commitment to yourself. And I swore to myself I would never take drugs again. And I was walking home from the town, which is about 3 miles from my home. And I was getting darker and darker as I crashed from the acid. And when I saw it, and I had to go home and face my mom. I had violated my curfew, and my mother had invented tough love. And I saw some older boys in the woods near my home. And I went in to see what they were doing, and I told them that I was crashing on the acid. And they said, try some of this. And it was a line of crystal meth. And I took it, and all my problems went away, just evaporated. I felt better than I'd ever felt in my life. And my progression, they say that your addiction is doing push-ups when you're not doing it and getting strong. And my addiction came on full force. And within about 3 weeks, I was shooting meth. And by the end of the summer, I was shooting heroin, which was my drug of choice for the next 14 years, until I was 28 years old. And to me, I tried earnestly, sincerely, and honestly to quit constantly. I made pledges to my brothers, to my friends, to my family. I took vows. I wrote out agreements and contracts. I saw a psychiatrist. I did everything that I could think of, and nothing worked. And to me, the most demoralizing feature of this disease was my incapacity to keep contracts with myself. And I would tell myself at 9 in the morning, I'm never going to do that again. And I would absolutely believe it and be committed to it. By 4 o'clock, I was doing it. And I had no control over that person that I was going to be at 4 o'clock. And of course, like most addicts, I interpreted this as a moral failure, as a character failure. And that fed this addiction of morosity, of self-loathing, of darkness. And I came in, I got arrested in September of 1983. And at that time, the cat was out of the bag, and I was able to do things, including go to 12-step programs, which I would have never done before. Because of my family and the way that I've been raised, the last thing I would do was to share the secrets that I had with a crowd that I didn't know. So suddenly I could do that. And I knew that I needed a spiritual awakening, because I did not want to be the person that I was. I wanted to be just a normal person who didn't wake up in the morning thinking of drugs and thinking about them all day and devoting my energies to that. I wanted to be somebody just got up in the morning and went to work and had a normal life. I didn't want to be that person. I definitely did not want to be somebody who was white knuckling it, who was on the street trying to not take drugs but wanting them all the time. I just wanted to be a different person. I've 12-stepped with many people in my program over the years, and a couple of times people said to me, including a cousin who's now dead from this disease, he said to me, I don't want to go to that program, that 12-step program, because they brainwash you. But if somebody had said to me that time, and I could get brainwashed, I would say, bring it on, because my brain needed washing. I did not want to be that person. Oh. And I had a friend, my little brother's best friend, who used to take drugs the same way that I did, and snorting lines and shooting dope. And he became a Moonie. He joined the Unification Church, and he became a follower of Reverend Sun Myung Moon. And he would still hang out with us, but he just didn't want drugs anymore. And we could do them right in front of him. And he had no compulsion. And I used to think about him when I first started getting sober. And I would think to myself, because I had a lot of biases at that time, oh, I'd rather be dead than be a Moonie. But I wish there was some way for me to distill whatever he had that made him impervious to that compulsion without becoming, a religious nuisance. And at that time, I picked up a book that was just laying on a table by Carl Jung called Synchronicity. The only reason I picked it up was because there was an album by the Police at that time by the same name. And it had just come out. And I didn't know what the word was. And synchronicity is a coincidence. It's like the kind of thing that all of us experience at one time or another, where you're, for example, talking about somebody that you haven't thought about in 20 years, and the phone rings and it's that person on the phone. And Jung, who was a deeply spiritual man and played a key role in developing the spiritual dimensions of the 12-step program, he was a protege of Freud. And unlike Freud, who was an avowed atheist, Jung was a deeply spiritual man. And he had authentic spiritual experiences from when he was a little boy. And he said in this book, he was trying all these ways he had a lot of synchronicities in his life. And they were transformational experiences for him. For example, at one point, he was sitting with a patient and he on the third floor of his sanatorium, which was the biggest sanitarium in Europe.
So I hope you can hear it too. Is that Kennedy's voice gets better. I should have turned the captions on, but his voice gets a lot better as I don't know if it's a comfort. The more comfortable he is, maybe he's told his story probably a lot, but obviously the more passionate he is too. Sometimes. So I'm gonna skip that particular story.
And I'm with you and giving you the strength. And Jung tried to reproduce that in a clinical setting. He's a very faithful son, and he would have proven that there's something supernatural. Now is the first step to proving the existence of a God, which he was very interested in doing. And he says in this book, which I really respect, is that he could never succeed in doing that. But he said, But he said that he was unable to prove the existence of God using empirical spiritual tools, empirical or scientific tools. Having seen tens of thousands of patients come through his facility, he said he could prove that people who believed in God got better faster and that their recovery was more.
That may be
that their recovery was more enduring.
That may be another heckler or somebody getting
do anything that improves my chance of sobriety, even by 1%. So I just made a decision, I'm going to start believing in God. And then I was confronted with this dilemma that everybody who makes that kind of decision confronts, which is how do you start believing in something that you can't see or smell or touch or taste or acquire with your senses? And Jung solves that problem. He says, fake it till you make it. Act as if. And that the obedience and the faith will precede the evidence. The evidence will become overwhelming. At first, you have to make that choice. So I made this decision, and I started behaving like that. I knew what it looked like to have faith, and I put religious iconography, a picture of St. Jude as a saint of hopeless causes, St. Francis, who was my patron saint, and other religious iconography around my bed. I knelt and prayed, and I prayed for faith because I didn't have any. And I prayed to make it easier for me to believe in something. And I started then behaving as if there was a God up there, and he was watching me all the time, and that I had to behave myself even when I didn't have an audience. So I started breaking my day down into about 40 different moral decisions. Do I stay and do I get up when the alarm goes off, or do I stay in bed another 15 minutes with my indolent thoughts? Do I make the bed when I go up? I've been on the road for 2.5 years living in hotels, and I make the bed every day, which is insane. But I do it. I do it because I made a commitment, and I can keep commitments now. I do it because what I'm trying to do is to build character and not to make a big pile for myself, and whoever dies with the most stuff wins. It's all about building character, because the wealth you build, the fame, is illusory. Do I put the water in the ice tray and I put the ice tray back in the freezer? When I reach into my closet and pull out some blue jeans and all those little wire hangers fall on the floor, do I shut the door like I used to and say that's somebody else's job? I'm too much of a big shot for that. Or do I go in and clean up my mess? Do I put the shopping cart back in the place where it's supposed to go in the park rather than leaving it in the parking lot? When I first got sober.
That's one of my big ones. I always park next to where the parking where the shopping carts go. That way, it makes it easy to bring the cart back. But if you ever seen cart narcs, that will really want to make sure that you bring your cart back. But I love this. I mean, it's just these are simple things, but if you can practice some of these things that Kennedy is talking about, it will just make you a better person, just in general.
About probably 6 or 8 weeks into sobriety, my life had gotten very, very small from addiction. And it started getting very big again. And I was running through National Airport to catch a plane that was mission critical that I'd be on that plane. I was already late and probably going to miss it. And as I was running, I was putting dentine in my hand. And I was thinking, the apocalypse is going to happen if I don't get on that plane. I was putting a piece of dentine in my mouth, and I balled up the wrapper. And as I ran, I threw it, and the wrapper did a perfect arc, swished it right into the trash can. And as I was running by, I noticed out of the corner of my eye that it had jumped back out again. It must have hit something in there. And I said to myself, well, that's God's fault because I made the shot. So, and I got about 40 feet down that runway, and it just started eating at me. And ultimately, I put on the brakes and went back and put that in. And I made the plane. But the most important thing I did that day was that little act, because that's how I maintained that posture of surrender. And for me, surrender was easy when I first came in, because my life made it obvious that I didn't know how to run things, and I had to let somebody else, which was God, run them. when the cash prizes start flowing in, my inclination is to say, thanks God, I got it from here, and take the wheel of the car and drive off the cliff again. And the challenge for me, and I think for all of us who are trying to maintain long-term sobriety, is how do we stay in that posture of surrender, even when everything's going well in our lives? And my life started going well, and it be these miracles. We had, when I first came in September 1983, I go to a meeting every day. I got off the plane last night and I went to a meeting. And when I came in 42 years ago, I said to a guy, how long do you have to keep coming to these meetings? And he said, just keep coming till you like it. I've been coming 42 years and I still don't like it. But I go every day because when I go, the rest of my life works. The lights turn green for me. The parking places open up. People answer the phone. The projects that I work on get over the goal line. And it's kind of this magic that it makes no sense logically. And then when things do go wrong, I know how to handle crises. I know what to say to people when they have a loved one lost. I know how to handle failure in my own life. And I've learned that God talks to me through other human beings. God talks to us through many vectors, through each other, through organized religions, through the great books of those religions, through wise people, through art, literature, music, poetry, through nature. But nowhere with a kind of texture and grace and precision and joy is through other human beings. And addiction is about isolation. Addicts end up in jails, institutions, and death. And even when I was surrounded by people, which was the truth for much of my life, I was still alone because I was looking at life and relationships through this mesh of dishonesty, of vanity, of arrogance, and a complete lack of intimacy, a complete, real, authentic connection to community.
That was another heckler. Of course, then the camera has to go and cut to it and make a big deal out of it. But Kenny does, he's not phased, just keeps going on.
And part of this program that I work is about increasing my connection to community and seeing God in every person, even people that I don't particularly like. In fact, God talks to me most through those people. So when somebody gives me a finger on the street because they don't like my driving, I have to say that's God talking to me. And what does he want me to learn? What does he want me to learn from this interaction? What am I supposed to do with this interaction? Should I pray for that person? Or should I pull them out of the car, which is what I used to do? And it has a magical impact on me. Thank you very much.
It's not a political crowd. And he does talk a few minutes about Trump coming up here, but not really too much there. It is really a point of fact. He's trying to stay focused on where he is, reading the room and knowing what the people are there for. And these people need help. And they go to these summits to be encouraged. They go to these summits to help others. And they go to these summits to learn, to stay involved. And a lot of people need this right now.
We have an addiction and overdose crisis in this country. I think last year we lost 106,000 kids. This is double the number that we lost during the 20-year Vietnam War. And we need to pay the same attention to this crisis, which is a national security threat and a threat to everything we love about our country, as Vietnam. And you know, President Trump was in 3 weeks ago. He met with Claudia Sheinbaum, the new president of Mexico. He said to her, all of the drugs are coming through your country. Do you have a addiction problem? And she said, no, not really. And he said, why is that? And she said, because we have strong families in this country. And one of the things that addiction is a source of misery. It's also a symptom of misery. And it's a source. It makes the addict miserable, and it makes everybody who he has relationships with miserable. It's also a symptom of misery, of grief, of trauma, of loneliness, of alienation, of dispossession. One of my favorite quotes from C.S. Lewis is he said, I spent so much time with grief that I spent so much time with anger that I came to know that her name was grief. And all of us have grief in our lives and trauma in our lives, everybody. And for me, my solution for trauma was I felt like I was born with an empty hole inside of myself, that I had to fill it with things outside of myself. And those are the only things that work for me. And every addict feels that way in one way or another, that they have to fix what's wrong with them. And the only thing that works are drugs. And so the threats that you might die, you're going to ruin your life, were completely meaningless to me, because I needed relief from that pain. And I found that in the 12-step program, because 12 steps are about getting rid of isolation, overcoming isolation, and reestablishing our connection to community. And I see each of us as a vessel of godliness, and that we're connected to all these different relationships. Some of them are very big, like PVC pipes coming into this vessel. Those are our wives, our children, our parents, our aunts, our mothers, our best friends. And then some of them are little tiny pipes, like the guy who gives a finger to me on the street. They're all relationships. And if we're working well, then there's liquid flowing through that into us. And our job is to amplify it and send it back out to the world. That's God's power. What addiction does is our character defects, our pride, anger, lust, envy, gluttony, avarice, sloth, dishonesty, selfishness, arrogance. We plug up each of those gems. And by the end, we're alone. And that vessel is stagnant. And that's the definition of insanity. And the 12-step programs that I practice are about going out, admitting and dealing with your own character defects, acknowledging them, and even learning to love them. And then unclogging all of those channels by going out and making amends to people we harmed. And in that way, God's power comes back into us. Now, what does that mean for national policy? What it means is we have to do all of the nuts and bolts things that you are all involved with, the practical, pragmatic things. We need Suboxone, we need methadone, we need naltrexone, we need Narcan, we need good fentanyl detectors that can detect it on pills, et cetera, so the kids are less likely to overdose. We need prevention. We need education. And we need treatment. And we have $4 billion at my agency to finance those solutions and those attacks on addiction and overdose. But that alone, throwing money at it, is not alone going to work. We need to really focus on reestablishing these historic ties of community. We have this whole generation of kids who's lost hope in their future. In 2013, there was a poll in which people under 40 years of age were asked, are you proud of the United States of America? And 90% of them said yes. The same poll taken last year, 17% said yes. So you have this whole generation of children that's lost faith in our country, lost because they've lost faith in their own futures. And they've lost their ties to community. And one of the things we need to do, by the way, we live our own lives individually, but also through policy changes, is to try to reestablish for those kids, one, hope for the future, but also a sense of connection and usefulness to community. And there's many ways that we can do that, and particularly through service. Bill Wilson established the AA program. Well, you know, he went to the Oxford Group, which was the predecessor organization, which had 8 steps. That were 8 of the steps that are part of the AA program, but originally there was just 8. And they were designed to induce a spiritual awakening, and he had a spiritual awakening. His desire, like for me, the day I had it, I never had a desire for drugs and alcohol. And the same thing happened to him, and he was 6 months down the road.
Tells this story.
Could not imagine that he'd ever drink again. It was incoming, and it was summoning. And he said, you got 15 minutes being useful to another person. And, you know, I tell people who are unhappy with their lives, who lost a boyfriend or a girlfriend, who are in a depression, I say, one of the best ways to deal with that is to wake up in the morning and instead of saying, what can I do to make myself happy? What can I do to make myself more loved? What can I do to get my boyfriend back? I say, when you get up in the morning, you have to ask one question. You have to say, reporting for duty, sir. And then you have to ask one question and say one prayer. Please make me useful to another human being today.
Yeah. I thought that was another very powerful moment. And, you know, I've been blessed to have a really great job where I get paid to help people. Not everybody can do that. And so this was a big reminder as I was listening to this last night on the treadmill. And it was a big reminder that, you know, how good that I really have it, how blessed that I am, and to learn to appreciate it. And I do enjoy helping people. I get a lot of personal pleasure probably from it, from helping others, dealing with their problems in my work environment and solving their problems or helping them with their problems or helping them work through it. And I get a lot of pleasure for it, and I get paid for it. And not too many people can say that. So this really resonated with me as Kennedy was talking about this. Only a few more minutes here. All in general, very powerful.
Well, you know, I would encourage you all to think broadly about what our mission is. Because it's not just about making sure every cop and every paramedic has naltrexone. That's important. And it's not just a prevention on the border. That's important. It's not just making sure that every addict, when they have those moments, when they're willing to ask for help, that there's a rehab ready for them to go to. And that is critically important. There are bigger issues. How do we restore our families? How do we restore that commitment to community? You know, I was in Virginia the other day, and I went to a school where they have cell phone use banned, a public school. The grades have skyrocketed. The test scores have skyrocketed. The violence has dropped. And I walked through the lunchroom and saw kids talking to each other. Nobody was looking at a cell phone.
Isn't that amazing?
I went to
It can be done.
I went to the Mennonite community a couple of weeks ago. The same thing. There were kids. They discouraged use of cell phones. The kids. We had a huge mass dinner with 400 people. The kids were all sitting together, talking and laughing. They were out playing in the parking lot with each other, and nobody was looking at a cell phone. And these little devices that we have are taking us away from each other. And that feeds the addiction crisis. And what we need to learn to do is one of the great things that they told me there is they said, you know, when I was at Louisa County in Virginia, they said the parents, I talked to the parents too, and they said it's so great because Now the kid, is much easier to tell the kid, don't use a cell phone from you drive. Don't use it at the dinner table. And they have dinners with each other where they actually talk with each other. And all of us in this age have a hard time being parents. But we can also educate the parents. You gotta have a meal, sit down with your kids, and have a conversation with the cell phones are banned. And do these other, and then give them opportunities for service. Because everybody wants to be effective in their lives. Everybody wants to be useful. And when you're serving other people, that has a magical impact on your life. It takes away the depression. The self will run riot. You focus instead on another person's problem, at least for a few moments of the day, and that is a reprieve. And we need to think creatively about providing them those opportunities. As saying, banning cell phones in school is one of the things that we need to do to remedy addiction, not just all the standard nuts and bolts things, which we need to do. We need to do everything we can to reestablish hope in our kids, to reestablish a sense of mission in their lives, a sense of purposefulness, and opportunities for them to act as part of a community. So thank you all very much for your commitment to this issue, and God bless you.
Great, very powerful speech by RFK Jr. And that's where I'm going to probably leave this one here. I was very encouraged by it. And as always, no media coverage, really no press coverage on about this at all. I just happened to pop up in my feed, in my YouTube feed, so I was able to grab it as it popped up. But if you want to watch the whole thing, you can go to Forbes News. I also have the link here. It is on my YouTube channel. So there's always places to watch this. I'm always on the hunt for any new RFK video. It's not really hard to find the Trump ones, but the RFK ones are a little bit more challenging. But if you just go to the channel at Greg Fernandez Jr., you will be able to see, just look for the clips. That's probably the best one. That one will always have the latest videos from Kennedy and Trump. So anytime that I find something, as long as I don't get in trouble for posting it, and it's all under the video section too. That's the latest one. Jesse Waters, his new FDA, the head of FDA is also there, and anything that I can find on Kennedy and Trump, even the one that I really want to do a show on this, the RFK assassination files and what they found in there. So I just haven't had time for that, but that came out, and I do hope to have more time for that. But you'll always find the latest videos without any commentary or anything. I'll always try to post them as long as YouTube's okay with it, and as long as the original content creator is okay with it, it will be up here. But sometimes it is very difficult to find the RFK Jr. videos without being in the algorithm, I suppose. And you won't really find it on his channel either, or find anything that it's even happening or coming up. So a lot of the times he's just so busy, would rather just get the work done. So some great people are able to go and find these videos, and then I'm able to watch them, to try to keep up with everything that Kennedy and Trump is doing. Just because the book is done, just because all of that is finished, doesn't mean that I don't want to see what's happening here for the next 4 years. I mean, we're only about 100 days in so far, maybe a little bit more, but 4 months. It has been an amazing 4 months. God bless you all. Remember, Jesus Christ loves you, and so do I. Till next time.